Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Risk with Dr. Naveen Agarwal. Each week, we talk about a topic related to risk management of medical devices in a very casual and informal way. This is not a webinar or lecture. Rather, our goal is to talk about key topics and challenges in a very informal way and share best practices. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, and I'm the principal and founder at Achieve, where my personal mission is to help you achieve success in risk management. My guest in this episode is Daniel Roberts. We are talking about the connectivity between risk management and design controls in a typical medical device safety risk management process. Now, Daniel has years of experience, both in quality management as well as technology management in R&D groups. So he's the best person to talk about how best to connect these two processes and what kind of challenges we face in practice. We had this conversation in front of a live audience as part of our weekly LinkedIn Live Let's Talk Risk Conversation series. You're about to hear a recording of our conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So with that, today I'm so excited to welcome Daniel Roberts. So he has a lot of experience in the medical device industry, and now he is out on his own as a consultant. But we'll have a lot of conversation today about the interface between risk management and design control. This is one area where I think practitioners struggle in our industry. It is not easy. It's quite challenging. So it'll be amazing to hear Daniel's thoughts on this and maybe some best practices. But once again, I will invite you to participate in this conversation with your own comments and thoughts later on. So with that, Daniel, I want to welcome you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Naveen. Very excited to be here and excited to have the invite to talk to your group here.
That's awesome. So Daniel, why don't you start with just a brief introduction about you, let our audience know some of the key aspects of your experiences.
Sure. So going back after college, I was actually in the Navy for a few years after college, flying some aircraft, and I was an intel officer in the Navy as well too. But then I left and I got my undergrad in biomedical engineering. So I thought I might as well use the degree. So I got a job at Stryker. And so for the first few years I was at Stryker and did kind of all things regulatory and quality, from MDRs, complaints, CAPA, internal audit, supplier controls, and then moved more into the advanced quality engineering side, the design quality, being on the design team, focusing on risk management within that realm as well. And there I moved over to Pentax Medical, Japanese company, based in Japan, but with their home office here in North Jersey, which is where I'm based. I was there for a little while and then moved over to BD, Becton Dickinson, also just down the road from where I live. And my most recent role there was the global process owner for design control. So BD's been doing work to harmonize the quality system. So we did a lot of work within one of the bigger businesses and medication delivery solutions. Then we tried to take some of that work and apply it to the global processes as well. But you were here last week. Mark Armstrong's also been involved in a lot of that work too. So that was some of my connection with him from last week.
That's awesome. So I think your background is a little bit interesting, and I didn't know much about that before. But it seems to me that you came to the medical industry with a very good practical understanding of risk. I mean, you were in high risk environment, high risk situations, right?
Yeah.
So I was just curious, like, as you entered the medical device industry, in what way did it help you to kind of transition into this role, which, honestly speaking, tends to be very compliance focused? So what was your experience like as you transition into this industry?
No, it's good question, Naveen. So one thing about Stryker is very, if you're familiar with it, they've got a certain hiring way, and they like to hire a lot of type A personalities, and a lot of former military officers fall into that. So there's a good chunk of former military who work at Stryker. So that was kind of a little bit easier on the transition. And actually, my first VP there was a former Navy SEAL type. So we could make fun of each other around that stuff.
Nice. So you kind of had the environment, and people were looking at things, in a very similar way, and you were able to transition properly in that environment, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, I was able to transition. I wouldn't say it happened overnight. But going into the corporate world from the military world was a little bit different, but not anything 2 hour. The biggest difference is I didn't have to call everyone senior to me, sir.
Yes.
But I got over that quickly.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. That's great. So, Daniel, we're going to talk about the interface between risk management and design control, and you have so much experience in this area. So I would just like to start by asking you, where do people struggle the most when they try to connect risk management with design control?
I mean, I think a lot of the big struggle, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen, is the, some of these things are kind of done in different silos and not necessarily done together from a design input side and a risk side and figuring out where it goes together. Where really, you really need to have the teams sit together and, if the quality folks are in charge of the risk side, they need to sit with the design folks and really understand how the design and the risk and the design and the risk work together. Or really from a design input perspective, you're identifying the functionality of the device within your design inputs, but those need to transfer directly over to your risk to understand, if you're looking at a functional analysis, if you're looking at the specific risk lines, doing a top-down or a bottom-up approach, you need to connect those things together so that way it's kind of clear how these things work together and make sure that you're really actually looking at the risk correctly.
Yeah. So again, you bring up the collaboration theme once again, and I think we have heard that over and over again in these LTR conversations. Collaboration matters, and it's true that a lot of times our quality regulatory colleagues are involved in the risk side, whereas engineers are working on the product development side, and it's the connectivity between the two that has to start first, right? So that's a very good point. Now, having said that, so if that's the situation, we'll talk more about some of the practical tips on how to connect risk with design control. But having said that, where do you think are the barriers to that collaboration, especially between quality, risk side, and engineering side?
Yeah, no, it's sometimes it can be a physical thing. Sometimes they're just sitting in different buildings or maybe even different parts of the world. So the closer that those teams can get just from a running into the hallway is helpful. Kind of having those relationships is good, and just really kind of trust and integrity between the two groups there, because essentially I've seen it happen where stuff happens and one group doesn't necessarily trust the other, or they feel like there's something might be going on that's not the best way of doing stuff, and once you kind of lose that trust between those groups, it's very, very hard to get it back. So that's something that's very important. And once really the team shouldn't see themselves as two different groups, fighting against each other. They should see themselves as one big group working together to design, a safe and effective medical product, medical device for patients.
Yeah. So staying focused on the overall objective and purpose, right, is important. And I think this is a leadership opportunity for all of our colleagues. We get so involved in the day-to-day work that we forget that there's a leadership component to what we do. Right. Yeah.
It's very. It's tricky from a quality management side, because I've been on the quality management side and on the R&D management side, and it, a lot of it comes from having good managers who can really, get the right messaging to their engineers, and really and understand too where the different group is coming from. So if you're a quality manager and you just want the most conservative thing possible, and you just kind of say no to everything, then essentially R&D is going to stop coming to you and asking you for questions, not because you're not getting the right the answers that they want, but it's really having a more open discussion and understanding how the product works and what really is best for customers and the business at the end of the day.
Yeah, and on the other side, if we keep from the quality management perspective, if we keep hearing from our R&D colleagues that, hey, we know what we're doing, leave us alone, there's no need to document this, there's no need to follow this, we got all under control, and we'll talk to you when we have to do something
when we're done.
So that I think this kind of communication will always be a problem in collaboration, and we have to be mindful. And I think one of the things that I want to highlight here, we talked about the role of empathy in one of our conversations. How as leaders, whether we are in the R&D management or in quality management or risk side, as leaders we have to empathize with our colleagues across different functions, so we know what their challenges are and help communicate that. So with that, I wanted to ask you, Daniel, if you can share with us a good example of where you have seen a nice tight integration between risk and design, both on the input side and on the output side.
You're talking about from like a team perspective?
No, just from a technical side now. If you can give an example so people can understand how this whole process, these two processes could work together on the input side as well as on the output side?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that's always tricky in any design work you do is the reliability numbers that are associated generally with design verification testing. There's always it's always a fun discussion on what the reliability number should be. Oftentimes you'll see companies, you have a matrix that says, hey, if your risk for this design verification test is high, then you want to use 99%. If reliability is medium, 95%. If it's low, 90 or something like that. So generally there's a sliding scale. So say, hey, the riskier that the product is, the higher reliability numbers you should use for testing to make sure that the product's going to function correctly. Which makes perfect sense. I mean, it makes sense, and it's I kind of call it the easy way of doing it because it doesn't necessarily require you to think. But what I looked at is trying to actually kind of flip that backwards a little bit and really have the reliability, which is really a core functional characteristic of the product, really should sit kind of at the design inputs and then should link directly over to your risk analysis. So ideally, you probably have a design reliability number as part of your design inputs, and then that number should directly come out within your DFMEA as well, because that's really a core function of how well the device functions and what it can do. As you do that, that number should roll up into your overall occurrence rates. And so there you're kind of doing it coming from the different direction where you say, hey, this is the functionality that the device needs to have. This is how reliable that should be. You capture that in your design inputs, link it into your DFMEA, and then as you roll up the overall, occurrence of hazard situation or occurrence of hazard, however you're managing it, that's naturally going to drive your final occurrence value for the individual risks. So that way you're getting a true risk benefit analysis looking at, how the product should be performing.
Got you. So what I'm hearing you say that it is still risk-based. It's not that it's not risk-based, but it is not like a, blind following of 99, 95, 90% level reliability. It's not just like a set stage, but depends upon how you have done your sort of risk analysis early on and what should be the expectations from the product.
Yeah, exactly. It's very difficult to do because it does take a lot of work and a lot of thinking. And going back to our previous discussion, there really collaboration between multiple functions to make sure, like, understanding, hey, how is the product going to be used? What's the functionality? What's the potential, harms that could come about it? And it's going to vary from product to product. When you're talking about, something you make $1 billion of something, it's a very different risk. Yeah. Discussion than maybe something you're making a few hundred. And so those risk benefit analyses are going to be very different. And using the same reliability, expectations for both of those types of products really doesn't work.
And also, I think this makes a lot of sense to me because what I have seen in my practice, many times we focus only on the severity level. We can say if severity is high, we want 99% reliability. It's medium or low. So we are not even talking about risk. We are talking about just severity, right? So that's one point. The second point is that many times, in fact, you want high reliability even when the severity of the potential harm is low because it causes a lot of nuisance or inconvenience to our customers. It's bad for our brand equity. It's bad for customer experience. And by the way, that nuisance could lead to a more severe harm later on due to operational errors. So I think by following a blind recipe of severity high, reliability expectation high, severity low, reliability expectation low, we may actually forget that reliability should be considered as appropriately in the context of the overall use, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's exactly kind of what I'm getting at, and that way allows you to better, understand what part of the design is important. Or if you do have, there might be a case where you want a high reliability for customer satisfaction issues, or maybe it's low risk associated with whatever that functionality is, and so maybe you want to have that higher number, but then at some point down the line, you make a design change or something, you can look at it, and if you documented your design inputs well and they translate over to your risk well, you could have a good way to lower that reliability number if you need to, look at how the complaints are working in the field and just understanding why that reliability number exists and not just, blindly following a number because the procedure says to follow this number.
Wow. So I think that is where the power is, the power of collaboration and conversation. Because we all bring our different perspectives. It's not about blindly following a recipe or a table. We want to question what everything is and how it is. So this is awesome. I really love the way we have kind of staged this conversation today, guys. I want to start inviting you all to share your thoughts. And what you need to do is indicate to me that you're interested in joining us, I think you have to find on the bottom right of your screen some kind of, I think it's an icon that will help you raise your hand. Ed is asking to speak, so I'm going to bring him on. But guys, don't wait for your turn. This is not, this has to go spontaneously. So, and it takes me a while to bring you on. So make sure that if you're interested, you raise your hand now and I'll bring you on the stage. So Ed, with that, I'm so glad to see you again. Please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind.
Okay, Naveen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Very good. It's good to have you with us, Daniel. And
Thank you.
Bravo Zulu to you.
Yeah, so yeah. So I'm sorry.
Well, my condolences to you. But anyway,
Thank you.
what I wanted to talk about is something that Daniel brought up. One of the most successful projects I was ever involved with was where the company co-located everybody on the project team. We had one room. We were all in. And it was the design people. I was a supplier quality person at that time, the regulatory. Everybody was in the same space. And when something came up, you just turned your chair and had a conversation about the problem, about the issue that we were trying to solve right there at the same time. And so if design brought up something, the manufacturing people would say, well, we can't build that because we don't have the right equipment. But if you did it this way, then we could build it. So there were lots of immediate problem solving that took place in that kind of a situation. But of course, today, with us being located all over the world, it gets a little bit more difficult to do that. But it's still, you could arrange some virtual sessions. And I was in a virtual session last week with the Risk Management Standards Committee, which met in Paris, and I was here and got up at 2 a.m. to attend the meeting. But anyway, it was a very interesting session, and I think the virtual stuff has really given us a tool that if we use it properly, we can solve a lot of problems quickly and come up with really successful designs. So thank you for your perspective, Daniel. I appreciate it.
Yes, that's a great point, Ed. And what I'm hearing here is that conversation is more important, not less. We think that we have so many technological tools available to us, AI or ChatGPT and this and that. We need more conversation, not less. But we now have an opportunity to have an informed conversation because we can mine this information prior to coming to that. So that's the reason why we do these Friday sessions too, by the way, guys, because it's not all about going through this standard, that requirement, or this technique or that technique. It's more about bringing all of us together for a conversation. So I hope you will participate because that's what it's all about. So Ravi, I know you have joined us. I would ask you to unmute your mic and share what you have in mind, please.
Hi, Naveen. Hi, Daniel. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, thanks you for today's conversation. I kind of come from a background where I worked on startup companies that have innovative products or we don't have any precedent. And I wanted to get your thoughts on what do you think are best practices for you doing risk assessment and design controls for in a situation like that, where we have something that's novel and new and kind of starting from scratch.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, Robbie, because it is the hardest stuff. It goes back a little bit to the discussion last week with Mark, where from that point you really need to kind of sit down and, I mean, you don't necessarily have to have a clinician or whoever's going to be a user on the project team, but you have to have discussions with them and have them those types of discussions when you're doing your rapid prototyping, early on to really get that immediate feedback to kind of understand how the product would be used, which is really setting up your framework to look at the risks for it and understand it. So. I mean, there's always trying to look at predicates and looking at similar products, but if you're really making something new, I mean, that's why startups are very hard and startups can be a bit challenging.
Yeah, what I've tried to do in situations I've been in is even advocate for doing risk assessment pre-design controls, like in the concept phase.
Yeah.
And, that's trying to bring in things from like 14.71, things like that, like the things you see in the technical report into that phase. But it's been a challenge on the technical side.
I know we have Ed here on the stage with us, Ed, and I certainly don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you can handle it. You have so much experience. Is there something you can share with us that will be helpful here in this context?
So I would love to have Christy here. Unfortunately, she's not with us because she works in startups, and Christy Johnson. But anyway, one of the things I can think of, and you're right, starting in feasibility, and especially it's required if you're going to do any clinical trials to have a risk analysis done before the device is exposed to customers. But where you can start is thinking about and go back to the Annex A 24971 questions about the characteristics related to safety, and then what standards apply. So if it's an electrical product, you know immediately that you're going to have to apply IEC 60601. And 60601 lists lots of hazards, which hazards are the beginning of your risk analysis. So you pick all those electrical hazards, you put those down in your risk analysis, and you start right there. So if it's going to be in body contact, you got biocompatibility, all the various things that go on about the product come from that list of safety-related characteristics, and you can start right there. And put it all together. So that's where I would start, Robbie.
I think that is a great recommendation, Ed. And in fact, guys, this is one sort of deep dive article I have addressed this week on the Let's Talk Risk newsletter about safety characteristics. Go check it out. But in addition to what Daniel and Ed have mentioned, what I would share with you guys is that in a startup environment, of course, we are focused on what to do, right? And how it will be done. But I think we should take a step back and really understand the use environment to say why it should be done in a certain way. Are there other better ways? So that analysis of Annex A questions and getting those answered will actually help us to get to that point. Because many of those aspects you may say it's not applicable or there's a better way. So I think in a startup environment, I would say it's challenging to take a step back because everything has to be go very quickly because we got to be in market first as soon as possible. But sometimes it might be worth spending a little bit of time upfront and doing that hazard analysis that Ed talks about, starts with the hazards. Can you even not do something in a way that gives you more hazards, right? Just eliminate some of those hazards right up front. So design choices can be made later on appropriately. Does that make sense, guys? I hope I was saying something that could make sense to you, that more of a strategic conversation first, and it doesn't have to be like, all time consuming, but somehow someone has to take the step. Hey, guys, do we really need to do it this way? Because if we did it other way, we won't have to address these hazards that we are talking about.
I think that makes sense, Naveen. I would add that what I think I've been most successful with in that kind of conversation is focusing in more on the user process and thinking about the process from a user perspective and a customer perspective. And that seems to resonate a lot more with the technical team and cross-functionally in general. So, to engage the entire team to think about risk assessment as a starting point.
And to be able to do that, I think we'll have to get the clinical input one way or another sooner than later. And we have had at least 3 or 4 conversations this year about the importance of getting clinical input. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to go hire medical clinical people on your team. You can find other ways of bringing that information up front. So great conversation so far, guys. We'll keep talking about this topic. We have a few more minutes left, but any one of you, if you have any other ideas, thoughts, questions, comments to share, please join us. John, I will bring you on here. Hopefully it works. Go ahead, John. Please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I agree with all the points with development and risk, more especially on standards and developing your risk analyses. With that, one thing to just add is with your usability testing, formative analysis will greatly add to that risk assessment. That's something to consider early in the feasibility phase, and you can get those pre-inputs to help develop that risk package.
That's a great point, John. And for those of us in the audience who may not be very familiar with that, can you say a little bit more about what that means and how early is useful from a formative usability study point of view?
Right. So feasibility, when you really have a product that's tangible, is usually what I see as far as the formative stage for usability testing. But if you're in the characterization concept or even prior to that, it can be beneficial so you understand what you need to be designing into the product and how to address the risks.
I see. So earlier the better, right? And the scope you can define in a way that it can be done efficiently without much cost and time. Because I think that's one concern people might have. Hey, John, this is a nice thing for you to say. I'm sure we'll benefit, but look, we got no time. We got to put this product out there as quickly as possible. How do you encourage people to take that step, which when you know it's going to be useful to us?
Right. Well, if you're actually out there talking to the clinicians, you could better understand those hazards. Really making to the point to the team, whether it's R&D or whatever functional representative you're talking about, coming from the point of the patient and what the risks are to the patient, and understanding what the clinician's user needs are that need to be satisfied, making those points really drive it home so it's more personal and how it could affect it.
Yeah. So I think it gives us a better sort of understanding of what the user needs are, how we can get there, what might be some issues. So in fact, we increase our chances of success in the product development. I think that's how we might want to pitch it for support, because a lot of people might say, look, we know what we need to do. Here's the timeline. We just got to get it done. But John, what you're saying is that maybe take a step back and help people understand why this information early on might actually help us get there faster at a lower cost, right? Yeah. So that's a very useful point. So Daniel, I know we are going to run short on time. So I do have one last question for you.
Sure.
Are there any tools that you can share with us that will help people improve this connectivity between risk management and design control?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Naveen. So what I kind of talked about before, really linking, the reliability from, a design perspective and into the risk perspective as well. So you really need a tool to manage it, because it can get complicated pretty quickly. And especially when you're dealing with a somewhat complex device, you need to really have a good way to manage it and track all that. So there are a lot of tools out there that can do that. Generally, most of them fall under the ALM realm or application lifecycle management, which is kind of really an offshoot from the software development folks. But it really gets the traceability where you can manage all of your design work, from your design inputs, your design outputs, your design verification, and then your risk files as well too, where you can actually identify your occurrence levels, identify your harms, your hazard situations, and connect them together. Because that goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where really they should be one. They should all be linked together, and there are good tools out there that can do that. In the past, I've used Polaria, and there's other ones out there like Jira. Windchill has a equivalent ALM thing out there. So there are a bunch of tools out there. They're not cheap, as one of those things are, but part of that, going back to almost what the discussion from John was there, is convincing leadership that, hey, this is something we want to spend money on because it's going to help us make better products for our customers, makes products more safe and effective, and make them much more sustainable when you have them in a digital tool as opposed to spreadsheets or physical documents.
Got you. So we can take advantage of some of the new tools available. So guys, I'm going to actually do a quick poll right now in the audience. Would you like to learn more about these tools and technologies in our future conversations in 2024? Please, share your feedback through these emojis in the react button. Let me know what kind of topics would be of interest to you. Okay, I know, Ben, you are asking to speak, and even though we are running short on time, I'm going to bring you on because I never say no to folks who request to speak. So Ben, briefly, please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind. With that, yes, go ahead. Who is? Yes, Ed, you have something. Oh, go ahead, Ed, please.
Want to point to that comment that I typed in the chat.
Oh, okay.
That's all I wanted to say is the new QMSR is at the White House right now for approval, and that is the last step. So it will be out probably in January, if not this month.
Oh, so of course, that's going to be a big change, right? And all of us will be impacted by that in one way or another.
Yeah.
So certainly we'll be talking about that next year. And any other topics, please, bring them to my attention one way or another. But we will have a listening and a feedback dedicated session early to mid-January. With that, I want to thank all of you guys and invite Daniel Benkin. If you can hear me and get a chance to unmute your mic, I still want to give you an opportunity to share what you have in mind. But if not, Daniel, please go ahead and share a couple of quick comments, quick points that we can all take away with.
Yeah, thanks, Naveen. Thanks for the time too, and kind of piggyback a little bit what John kind of talked about earlier. Is like, to do this stuff well, you have to start early, and you have to start often, and really understanding, from the usability side, how the product's going to be used by the actual clinicians, and that can really drive a lot of your thoughts from a design perspective and a risk perspective too, to understand what the potential hazardous situation and harms are. And so part of that is definitely getting in there, and a lot of the work you do up front can ideally make your work on the back end a lot easier. That's often very difficult to do in practice because, like Naveen was saying earlier, there's a lot of push to get this stuff done and out the door. But to do that, you really the teams really have to know their processes, their procedures, and kind of what the expectations are of them to make sure that they get good, safe, and product out the door. That at the end of the day, you're working for a business that needs to sell product to make money so you can have a job, and kind of understanding what you have to do to get that product to make money and to keep your team happy and keep your customers happy.
And I think that is where the leadership opportunity is for all of us, right? That's where we have to kind of seize this opportunity and say, there is a better way of doing it. Despite all these challenges that we face on a daily basis, here's a better way. And it all starts with collaboration. It all starts with bringing all of us together and sharing our insights and perspectives. Well, great, guys. Thank you so much again for this amazing conversation. Daniel, Ravi, Ed, and John, thanks for participating and sharing your thoughts as well. What a wonderful year we have had. I wish all of you guys a very nice holiday season. Take some time off. Enjoy time with the family, or do whatever you would like to do to just relax and recharge. We look forward to connecting with you once again in 2024. There'll be plenty of opportunities for us to engage and continue this conversation. With that, guys, take care, have fun, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.